In this lesson, we're going to continue to discuss paragraph formatting. If you'd like to follow along, go into the File menu to Open. And in the Sample Files folder, scroll down to 0704, Get Composed, and just click Open. What is text composition? It's the way that an application decides to end each and every line within a paragraph. All other layout programs besides InDesign, as well as all word processing programs, do composition pretty much the same way, one line at a time. So what it does is, as the text gets towards the end of a line and there's no more room, it will either add a hyphen to a word and bring the rest of the word down to the next line, or bring a whole word down to the beginning of the second line. And then it does the same thing in the second line. Gets towards the end and there's no more room, it will either add a hyphen or bring a whole word down to the third line. And it does the same thing in the third line, and continues doing that same process in each line all the way throughout an entire paragraph, one line at a time. Because it is working one line at a time, some unusual things can happen towards the end of paragraphs, or even in the middle. Like, take a look at what is happening here. I have a long line in my third to the last line, and then a shorter line in my second to the last line, and an even shorter line in my last line. And the same exact thing is happening in this paragraph. When InDesign was first introduced over 12 years ago, InDesign also introduced a new way of composing type called Paragraph Composer. Even though the text is exactly the same in this column as it is in this column, you can see that the nice in and out look of the rag is much more consistent and even using Paragraph Composer. Because what can happen when you run out of words and you start to get a shape is your eye can actually get lost as you're going down to the next line. Your eye will follow the shape and possibly skip a line, so you get lost in the text. Well, why don't we move in on this text that was done by Adobe Paragraph Composer. I'm going to go to my Zoom tool and just click and drag across that column of text. How does Paragraph Composer work differently? Well, it is looking at one line at a time. But at the same time that it's looking at each individual line, it's considering what will happen with the breaks 5 lines above and 5 lines below in this paragraph. So, with most paragraphs, it's actually considering the breaks in the entire paragraph at once. And it does work a lot better. You can actually see that the rag of the type is much more consistent and much less dramatic than it is in the other column of text that's using single line composer. But there's also a problem with Paragraph Composer, but it's not a big problem. Let me just scroll up a little bit here. Let's say I wanted to bring down this particular word manually. I wanted to do a forced line break. Well, so I can see what I'm doing. First, I want to go under my view options and turn on hidden characters so I can actually see what's going on. And if I wanted to bring this word down to the beginning of my second to the last line, if I were to do that using Shift Return or Shift Enter, it's possible, because it's considering everything that's above this particular line break. It's considering 5 lines above at the same time in that paragraph. I have to find a way to lock in everything that I'm happy with above the line break that I want to make. So what I'm going to do is go to the end of this third line, and I'm going to hit a Shift Return or Shift Enter there. And what that's doing, it looks like it's doing nothing to the text because it's not. It's actually locking in these 3 lines at the beginning of the paragraph. So when I click in the next line and I want to bring this word down, it's not going to do anything above this line because this is locked in by this shift return. So now let me get an entry point right before this word that I want to bring down in the third to the last line. And I'm going to hit shift return or shift enter. And you can see it didn't change anything above because everything above was locked in by this shift return shift enter forced line break that I added in the line above the line that I actually wanted to move a word down to the next line. So it's a good workaround. Let me delete these forced line breaks. The good news is it's very rare that you have to use forced line breaks to break lines manually when Paragraph Composer is being used. And that's because it does such a good job. I mean, this looks a lot better than what I had accomplished with my forced line breaks. Let me just zoom out to fit my page. I'm going to hit Command 0 on a Mac, Control 0 on a PC. And I want to scroll down to talk about one other feature that has to do with line breaks. I'm going to click in this big headline down the bottom of the page, and you can see how the first line is a lot longer, and the second line is really short. It's just one word. Wouldn't it be great if it automatically broke these lines so they were more balanced? Meaning there was automatically about the same number of characters in the first line as there is in the second. Well, what I can do is click anywhere in this paragraph, go under the Options menu of the Paragraph panel, and go to something called Balanced Rag Lines. And you can see it made those lines more even. We're going to continue to discuss paragraph formatting in the next lesson.